Following information is presented for discussion and educational purposes only and is not intended or provided as treatment information for any specific person or behavior. If you or a loved one is having behavioral difficulties, you are encouraged to seek professional consultation as soon as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 17 of Ask the Behavior Doctors. My name is Dr. Jacob Boney. I am the owner and clinical director of Scottsdale Pediatric Behavioral Services. We're here in Scottsdale, Arizona, bringing you the latest information, news, just technology from behavioral science. Parents, we want to encourage you to continue submitting those questions to us at info@scottsdalepbs.com, and we want to make sure that we are answering all of your questions, all of your concerns, all of your curiosities about behavior. So today's question is having to do with why do people continue and persist to do behavior that doesn't seem to make any sense? So I had a patient this week that I was treating, and mom asks me, she says, I don't understand why my teenager continues to lie and steal from stores, because they get in trouble, they get arrested, they get things taken away from them. They really don't get to keep the items very long. They get caught all of the time. Dr. Jake, I don't understand why my child would continue to lie and steal, even though there really doesn't seem to be a lot of sense to it. So how does that make behavioral sense? So I wanted to answer this question for this mom in a very understandable, a very kind of simple concept. It's very simple, yet it's very powerful. So several years ago, I read a book by a gentleman named Aubrey Daniels. It's called Performance Management. The book's now in its 5th edition. Performance Management is a phenomenal book, but it basically applies the science of behavior to work-related behaviors and says, why are people motivated to do certain types of things? Well, in his book, he has this concept called the PIC analysis, okay? So when starting a new job or starting with consultation, he basically was saying that he would start analyzing all of the target behaviors. So every kind of behavior he was looking for. So all of the targets to increase, all of the targets to decrease. He wanted to look at the consequences and the antecedents for those behaviors, but primarily the consequences. And he wanted to analyze whether those consequences were immediate or future, and then certain or uncertain. And what he's found unequivocally throughout his years of consultation is that the most powerful consequences are going to be immediate and certain. The least powerful consequences are going to be future and uncertain. So remember, you pick your target behaviors, you go through each of those, you look at the consequences for all of those, both good and bad, and you ask yourself which of these are immediate or certain, or which of these are future or uncertain. And again, unequivocally, this gentleman has found that the things that affect our behavior the most are the things that occur immediately and that occur consistently and certainly. So going back to the basics, operant behavior, remember what we're doing is called operant behavior. It's operational, it's functional. We do it to achieve a desired consequence or avoid something we kind of don't want. The behavior operates upon the environment to produce a desired consequence. So that concept of this operant behavior is really important to keep in mind. There's also this concept of selection by consequences, that as organisms, we select our responses based upon the consequences that those responses produce from the environment. So we are literally selecting our behavioral responses based on those consequences, and those consequences are maintained by the function that they serve. They are operating upon our choices are operating upon the environment to produce those desired consequences. So obviously operant behavior is going to be consequence maintained. So this concept of consequences is critical to understanding this PIC analysis. So remember, the most powerful consequences are going to be immediate and certain. The most weak, the least powerful consequences are going to be future and uncertain. So what we tend to see is positive, immediate, certain consequences for the undesired behavior, and we tend to see many negative, future, uncertain consequences. And then the opposite's true too. We tend to see many negative, immediate, certain consequences for the desired behavior, and then many positive, future, uncertain consequences for that desired behavior. Let me give you an example. I'm a busy guy. I want to start working out more. There's certainly some things keeping me from working out. You know, having not worked out in a while, I've got some considerations to kind of put into play. But I've worked out enough where I kind of know what I'm going to experience if I do start working out again here really soon. So I can immediately guarantee, or with certainty, guarantee that I'm probably going to experience some soreness. I'm probably going to get some fatigue. I'm going to experience less sleep. I'm probably going to be a little bit more irritable. I'm going to have more stress. I'm going to feel more overwhelmed trying to balance work and my, personal health life. It's going to disrupt my work. I'm going to have to change my schedule. I'm going to have to get out of my routine. Remember, these are immediate certain consequences that will most likely come from me choosing to work out. Now, the future uncertain consequences of me going to the gym and working out are that I probably will experience better health. I probably, in the end, will get more sleep and more quality sleep. I'll probably eventually experience less stress because my body will be in better shape. I'll probably have better and more consistent moods. I'll probably extend my life cycle by at least a few years, and I'll probably overall have less health problems. Again, those are fantastic consequences. However, they're future and they're uncertain. It's the immediate certain ones that are most powerfully preventing me from making this choice immediately, because those are things that are going to be hard to accommodate. Those are things that are certainly not pleasant, and those are things that I've experienced in the past. So just because those immediate certain ones don't seem as big as the future uncertain ones, it's because they're immediate and because they're certain that they're more powerful. So let's go to another example. Let's say smoking or drinking. Many people have these vices of smoking or maybe drinking in excess, a little too much alcohol. So let's think of some of the immediate consequences of smoking or drinking, especially from people that enjoy those activities. Typically, they report that they feel relaxed or that they find the activity relaxing. They think it has a good taste. They like that sense of a buzz. They get that satisfying kind of release. They feel less stress. They feel like they have better insight, maybe less kind of a block going on in their mind. And a lot of people report doing it socially. So they say that they get to spend time with their friends. They feel relaxed and they feel like it's a good social experience to do this. Do any of those things sound bad? Not at all. However, let's review some of the future uncertain consequences of smoking and drinking. You could get cancer. You could die significantly earlier. You could get heart disease. You could have yellow teeth. You could have liver issues. You could have a lower sex drive. All of those things sound awful, but because, again, those things are future and uncertain, they're not nearly as powerful in controlling the immediate behavioral response from the person as the things that are going to happen immediately and the things that are going to occur with certainty. So parents, professionals, anybody who I'm talking to right now, I want you to know this. It's the immediate and certain consequences that are always going to be the most powerful player in explaining why people make the choices they do. You can look at your life, look at the life of anybody, look at the behaviors that people do, and I guarantee you, if you go through this picnic analysis process, you're going to see that the behaviors those people emit the most consistently are the ones that have the most immediate and certain consequences. You're going to find the behaviors they don't do typically have the most future and uncertain consequences. And again, I'm confident that after you kind of look through this, examine your own life, examine the life of others, that this is going to hold true all of the time. Immediate and certain consequences are by far the most powerful, and they need to be incorporated as much as possible to affect our choice, to affect our responses that we give every day. So I want to explain my concept and how I do this picnic procedure in my work with patients. I often like to do what's called a day-by-day system. Okay, so what I'll do is, especially like, so telling you about this teenager I'm consulting with, I like to go to what's called a day-by-day system. So what I like to tell parents is you can't enforce a punishment or an aversive consequence any longer than a day. However, children don't have access to the things they want, their reinforcers, for any longer than a day. So I like to, like I said, take it day by day, make a day-by-day system. I do this for several reasons. Number one, it breaks the cycle of constant punishment, aversiveness, or removal of things. Think about it. When things get really tense, really negative, really toxic between parents and teenagers, what do parents do? They get into that cycle of taking, removing, restricting, punishing. What this does is it breaks that cycle. It breaks it down day by day, okay? It prevents and reduces what's called, I like to call it the screw-its. Sometimes when kids engage in an extended cycle of negative behaviors, they basically lose everything, and or they get so negative they say, screw it. I'm miserable, I don't have access to anything I want, I can't get access, so you know what, I'm gonna make everyone else around me miserable. I unfortunately used to have a bad habit of getting the screw-its when I was a teenager, not anymore. So what happens is, again, it becomes a competition of who can be more hateful, who can be more aversive, the teen or the parent. And then what happens is enforcing the consequence becomes more work for the parent than it is for the teen to actually deal with. That is a completely broken system. We don't want to get the screw-its. And here's the deal, you're not going to beat a hateful teenager with nothing to lose. As a parent, your sanity is worth too much. You're not going to be able to compete with that much negativity. So like I said, we want to prevent the screw-its at all costs. We want to put the focus on earning things each day and less on losing things. So like I said, with this day-by-day system, it really does a good job of preventing those screw-its, but it puts that focus on each day as a clean slate. That child wakes up and is able to earn access to the things that they want and the privileges they want by doing basic behaviors on a consistent basis just throughout that day. If they screw up, if they mess up, if they don't earn access, that's okay. It's just for one day. Tomorrow is always a new day. And obviously the biggest benefit of this is that it makes consequences much more immediate and certain. That child knows and consistently knows that they will either get access to the things they want and get the privileges they want to earn, or that they will immediately lose access for that day for not doing the behaviors that they agreed to do. It basically makes all of those things that used to be future and uncertain much more immediate and certain. And what this does, parents, like I said, is it gets teenagers and parents out of a really negative cycle, basically presses that reset button. And what I see is that a lot more momentum, a lot more positive momentum is built in a much more efficient and effective way. So I want to give you guys some advice about using these principles and the concept of this picnic analysis, because it's a very powerful concept. If you made all of the consequences for all of the responses you wanted to do in your life as immediate and certain as possible, you would get so much more, so many more of those responses you wanted to give. So setting up systems that really utilize this concept of making things immediate and certain could revolutionize the way that you behave and the way that your children behave. I want you to pick target behaviors, 3 to 5 at most, and I want you to pick the most important ones to increase. You're going to focus on things to increase. Okay, you're going to be flexible on any other standards or stuff. So parents, if you have a teenager, or let's say your partner, pick 3 to 5 things, behaviors, responses you really want to focus on. Communicate that with the teen, communicate that with your partner. Tell them you really want to work on these things together. Okay, but you want to, like I said, you want to keep your focus on those targets and not focus on the other types of behaviors. Remember, you can't fix everything all at once. You never will be able to. By keeping your focus on 3 to 5 behaviors, you make it much more realistic and much more practical that you're going to get a positive result in those 3 to 5 areas. So pick some target behaviors. What I then want you to do is I want you to look for opportunities to make consequences for those behaviors as positive, as immediate, and as certain as possible, okay? So you're going to try and make those, again, make the contact with that contingency as immediate, as frequent, and as certain as you possibly can. You're going to set mini goals. I want you to like set mini goals for the day with your children or your partner and discuss the consequences for meeting those goals. So obviously you can sit down with your kid and you say, look, you have your test today. You studied really hard for it. If you're able to perform at this level or if you're able to get this type of grade, this is going to be the consequence for being able to do that. And if you make that as immediate and as certain as possible, again, it's going to be much more powerful at motivating the child to provide that response. You can break that down too. Let's say studying behaviors. So let's say your child is trying to improve their grades. And that's one of those target behaviors, improving their grade. Let's say that studying more is the target behavior, that reading more. So, okay, buddy, if you come home and you read for 2 hours, this is going to be the consequence. If you read for 3 hours, this is going to be the consequence. Obviously, you want to provide a consequence that's positive enough to motivate the child to do the response, but you want to provide a consequence that's going to be powerful enough to consistently motivate that child to give you that response. I want you to use frequent measurement and monitoring of those target behaviors, and I want you to provide frequent feedback. And I want you to reinforce even small improvements in that direction. So again, let's say your child is not maybe meeting some of those reading goals that they're setting, but let's say they've increased their reading from an hour to an hour and 30 minutes each day. That's significant. Let's say their goal is 2 hours. That's okay. You should still reinforce. You should still look for immediate certain ways to reinforce that 30-minute improvement upon reading time. Because even maybe though that it's not the goal, it's still powerful, it's still a positive increase, and it's still something that should be reinforced. I want you to get rid of and use as minimal the threat of future or uncertain consequences. Remember, future and uncertain consequences are not nearly as powerful as immediate and certain consequences. Future and uncertain consequences condition the child that your consequences aren't going to matter or aren't as powerful as the ones that are really going to control their responses. So parents, the consequences you should have in place should be as immediate and certain as possible, and you should get rid of, as much as you can, those future and uncertain consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end for today. I want to thank you again for submitting those questions to us at info@scottsdalepbs.com. We want to thank our photographer, Mr. Philip Carnevale at philipcarnevalephotography.com. We want to thank you again for visiting our website, for submitting those questions. And we want to encourage you to visit our website at scottsdalepbs.com and continue watching Ask the Behavior Doctors.